today I'm going to go over the books that I read in April and May. The reason that I didn't put a video out last month was because I haven't really been enjoying doing the wrap-ups. I know I've only been doing them for a little bit, but we're still in the beginning stages. I don't want to recommend books by giving a scene-by-scene summary, so instead I'm just going to go over things that I noticed, things that I like and don't like, and leave it a little bit more ambiguous because if I'm recommending something, I don't want you to know everything about it. Because also, it felt really time consuming, especially when I couldn't remember all of the little details. So I just think that this is going to be a lot more flowy and fun, and I hope you like it better. So the first book that I read in April was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, and I am a Hunger Games girly. Hunger Games was the first book series that I really remember really getting me into reading, and this gave me the exact same feeling as when I was younger and reading the books for the first time. I loved everything about this, and it's the main reason why I didn't want to summarize anymore, because I also didn't want to give away a bunch of details if you haven't read it yet, because if you haven't, you definitely should. When I finished this, I literally sobbed so hard that I woke my husband up from a dead sleep. I was really excited to see what Suzanne Collins was going to do, considering we knew a little bit about what happened in the 50th Quarter Quell during the Catching Fire whenever they're going over the previous ones with Haymitch. And it leans really heavily into propaganda and how easy it is to manipulate video and media in general to show a specific narrative. Think about reality trash TV, kind of in that sort of vein, because there is influences there to, have things happen in a certain light. And that is a big theme in this book. Another thing, without spoiling the plot elements, I really loved seeing District 12 before Katniss. You also see a lot of characters from the original trilogy. Kind of gives you more information on their ages and the relevance to their age in Katniss in the original trilogy, because Katniss is just oh, you're older than me, you're an adult. And each character adds a lot more to the world and to the history that you don't really get to see in Katniss's books, because she is very, self-surviving, self-focused. It really shows that revolutions aren't brought about in a single wave, that sometimes there are people working before their plans kind of end up fizzling out instead. Suzanne Collins just hits right every single time. I loved this book. I loved the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes too, but not on the same level as this one, especially because I felt like the ballad was more of a character study on Snow rather than an actual plot world inclusion. Then I read Patricia Wants to Cuddle by Samantha Allen. This one felt like a true 3.5 for me in reference to my last video. It essentially centers around the last 4 women in a Bachelor-esque reality show. They're going to an island that's sort of known for having a bunch of lesbians or being a lesbian getaway. I had a lot of fun with these characters. I felt like they had very distinct personalities and voices. So we have Vanessa, who's a party girl who really just wants to marry the guy. I don't remember what his name is. And then there is Lila May, or Lily May, and she is a Christian influencer who is wanting to win and spread the word. Her and Vanessa are at each other's throats the entire time. It is so messy and fun. And then there's Amanda, who's really only there to grow her following on her social medias. And the last contestant is Renee. who is the only person of color, and she knows that she's not going to win because The Bachelor tells her that she's not going to win, but that production wants to basically keep her there for like inclusivity points, but that she can enjoy the vacation. This book really paints itself as queer, but it definitely could have been more gay. I think Amanda has two dads, and then there's the lesbian death cult, and there is a single sapphic kiss that is only included on a dare. My descriptions of these is not only depictions of queerness, it also sounds a lot more interesting than what it actually was. Like, within the lesbian death cult, there's two characters where we see some of their like letters to each other when they were growing up, but this felt really disconnected from the main reality and didn't really give a lot of insight to the lesbian death cult at all, which we learned nothing about either. And that's kind of what really disappointed me the most, is that we don't know anything about their like customs or rituals or how they know that they're supposed to be there. Patricia herself is no mystery with the cover of the book, but I think it would have been a lot more camp vibey if it was an actual surprise, because like it gives you little scenes where it's like, oh look, there's the Bigfoot, and it tried to make it kind of eerie, which it kind of did, but since you know who and what it is, it kind of just falls a little bit more flat until the actual like creature part starts. This was good in like a trashy TV reality sort of way. I hadn't gotten into like everything that happens in the story, but it's definitely fun if you want like a quick, almost campy read. Then I read Out of Darkness by Ashley Hope Perez. This was good. I just felt kind of icky after I finished it. Like, there's nothing wrong with it on a line-to-line level. I loved most of these characters, like Naomi and Wash and the twins. Literally everyone else is irredeemable, which I know is the point because of the setting. Just huge trigger warnings for the entire book, because there is a lot of racism and sexism, racist violence, sexual violence. Essentially, this is about a young girl, I think she's 17, Naomi, who endures racism and sexual harassment from her stepfather only because she wants to take care of her younger siblings, who he is the actual father of. So he was the reason that their mother passed in childbirth because her body couldn't handle it anymore, and he like comes to God and wants to prove that by taking care of his family. So the three children end up becoming really close with a local black boy named Wash. He lives in a nicer home where they're saving up for like a college fund, and he works and adds money to that constantly. I loved Naomi and Wash's relationship. They were so tender and loving, but obviously it's for a reason. This was just a hard read. I'm not rating it because there's nothing wrong with the writing of it. The ending, it just was so much in such a short amount of time that I just didn't know how to rate it for myself. But as a reminder, discomfort does not equal banning. Books should not be banned, but this is definitely something to prepare yourself if you're going to read. I didn't know anything about this book when I read it. That's on me for not reading trigger warnings. That's literally what they're for. I needed to pick up something a little bit lighter after that, so I did finally read The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. I really liked her other book, the one that has the Norse mythology to it, so I was really drawn by that, and then also this cover is just gorgeous. Literally love that. This was good. It's a standard romantasy. And then I do have to confess something. I did buy the second book to A Fate Inked in Blood, but it was because I was already planning on buying it, because I did like the first one, even though I retroactively made it a 3 instead of a 5, because I couldn't really remember a lot of it the last time I had talked about it. It's okay. But yeah, it has the general romantasy formula. enemies to lovers, but not really, because he's really nice to her the whole time, and it was really just like, hey, see how I'm not a bad man? And she's like, yeah, I see that I was lied to about a lot of stuff. Because essentially she's just like a spy going to infiltrate his kingdom and try to learn its weaknesses to send back to her father. And she is painted as a very smart protagonist, which I think is generally, pretty reliable, until you really weren't very smart, because it's her fault. And it's really obvious how it was her fault and how she's not smart because that happened. So that was kind of just a little bit annoying. I am probably still going to read the rest of it. I'm just not going to do that right now or get the rest of the books right now. I'm just pretty. I am a slut for pretty books. I'm sorry. I was imagining Emma Frost from the Marvel Rivals game as the main character, so I think that made it a lot more enjoyable for me. So that's what I finished in April, and then what I read in May, I started with Women and Children First by Alina Grabowski. It follows 10 women residing in a coastal town where a girl had died under odd circumstances. Not all of them have huge connections to the deceased. Some of them only mention in passing or mention someone who did know them. Through each narrative, you kind of learn more and more as you get to people who were closer to Sophie, and then people who were the most involved in her life and how they're dealing with the passing of that person. There's a lot of instances where you get to kind of connect who characters are and their relationships and how they correlate to other people. Like, someone won't know who a man is, and then the other person knows exactly who that man is. You might not like this one if you don't like things that are ambiguous, because each chapter is really just a snippet of that character's life. Like, they end pretty abruptly, in my opinion, like before something big's gonna happen or a big decision is going to be made. And that is like every single chapter that it happens. And there's only like 10 chapters because there's only 10 women. And then also, the death of Sophie herself is still, even though it's kind of explained, it's mostly ambiguous because you don't end up learning exactly what happened or why. It's really up to you as the reader to interpret for yourself the truth. When I first finished this, I wasn't entirely sure how to feel about it, but as I've been thinking it over more, I really did like this one. Grabowski writes very beautifully and really makes each character distinct from another one. Then I read The Seas by Samantha Hunt. Hunt's writing is very descriptive and flowy in a kind of purpley prose sort of way, but not at the same level as Roshani Chokshi, who wrote The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, which I could not really get into because it was a little more distracting for me. She kind of seems to like play with the words too, because at the same time she is also blending reality and the narrator's reality, which feels more like surrealist, and it's really fun to get into because the narrator herself is recognizably unreliable because of this. So it's really fun deciding what is like a metaphor for something, of which there are many, and what you want to take at face value instead. I think that makes it to where there's a lot more interpretations of the text. This was one of my book club picks. I really like this one. It actually inspired me and a couple of other members to read The Dark Dark by Samantha Hunt this month as well. So I'm going to talk about that one like right after this one. Hunt's writing, I want to add, is also very weird. At no point did I know what was going on or what actually was going to happen. I didn't read the synopsis of this one either. The Seas follows a 19-year-old narrator who is never named, And we get to see the world through her eyes as someone who is a mermaid. Fact, period. Because her dad told her that before he disappeared at sea when she was a child. And so she goes throughout the book believing that since she is a mermaid, her one love is either going to die or she herself is going to die because of a curse put on mermaids and what happened to her father. When she was 14, she fell in love with a man who reminded her of her father because the first time she saw him, he was coming out of the ocean. This is set in a coastal town where she lives with her mother and grandfather. Her and her mother do odd jobs around the town, like cleaning for a local motel, or her mother doing interpretation work for people who are deaf. I loved the parts of the narrator with her mother. It really felt like that relationship kind of pulled her back more to reality. And I also really loved the characterization of the mom because early in the book it says that her mother wasn't really sure when to be a mom or when to be herself. And I thought that was a really beautiful way to concisely speak of motherhood. Not that I'm one myself, but from what I've gathered, most of the narrator's focus is on Jude, a man 14 years her senior, and like the only person to hang out with her in town because the other people call her like slurs and think she's weird and bad luck because of what happened to her father. Jude was drafted into the Vietnam War, and there's a lot of biblical symbolism when it comes to his long chapter. He has like a monologue, like kind of towards the end of the book, but he doesn't really speak a whole lot up until that point. So we're really watching his actions from the point of view of the narrator, who really has rose colored glasses for him. He is not entirely blameless. While he doesn't necessarily enable or make it seem like it's okay for her to have feelings for him, he does literally say that, like, he would go to jail if they were together, but he doesn't exactly oppose it as well. Like I said, he's like the only person that hangs out with her. He has defended her from people who have called her the R word, and there is like some weird scenes where he's like looking at her while she's in the bathtub. So that's really icky. So he's not entirely blameless for that, but he definitely like does not encourage her advances and spends time with adult women around her. And the last thing I want to mention is that Hunt really embodies the foggy coastal weird town and does include some ghost-like scenes and vibes as well that leans really heavily on the is my dad really dead or not? Trigger warnings for suicide and grooming and suicidal ideation though. So after that, I went ahead and read The Dark Dark also, which is a short story collection by Samantha Hunt. I really like this one too. Some of the stories definitely went over my head a lot, but it is harder for me to connect with those since, you really only get a couple snippets of what's going on. Unlike the longer form stories, one thing that you can definitely count on with Samantha Hunt is that it's going to get weird. My favorite one involved a woman randomly turning into a deer at night and trying to figure out how to tell her husband, or the one about a man who runs over someone's family's dog and then has a special way of bringing it back to life. On the other hand, I really didn't understand the one called The Beast, which is about a mountain lion who develops a friendship with a young girl and then like defends her from someone, or the one where the siblings take their horse to Walmart. I want to be vague enough to give you interest without really telling you how shit goes off the rails. And we're planning on reading Mr. Splitfoot soon also. So I'm excited to do that one, I think, in like a week or two. Then I had the really unfortunate blind book pick. Me and my friend went to this strawberry festival in our state, and they had these blind books, and we were like, oh, let's go both pick out one. We'll read it and annotate it, and then we'll switch. I have finished mine. She has not finished hers yet. It's okay. Fine. But the one that I picked was labeled romance, okay? Does this look like a romance to you? The Bone Hacker features a special preview of Kathy Reich's next thriller, Evil Bones. I won't be reading it. Did not like this one, did not like the writing in this one, did not like how I think all but one description of a person of color was weird, and the other one compared them to dessert. Also did not like how this spoke about Jewish people. They were really villainized in this and cagey, and I just did not like the vibes. Here, I will give you some examples. It took me forever to get through this one. I really don't think my friend's gonna read this one either. She actually did get like a romance book, but I don't think she's gonna get through this one. Page 72. I detected something more exotic in her cadence. Okay. Page 142. The woman's accent and vocabulary suggested she'd probably grown up rough. Oh, and then describing a person of color. Tall and needle thin, the man's gray hair and furrowed skin, a shade somewhere between that of mud and dead leaves. Oh, page 164. Unfamiliar with the hood, Monk programmed his GPS with Cloak's scribbled address. Can we stop? Can we quit? Oh, and then the one where they compare their skin to food, it's on page 153. His skin was caramel, his freckles so dark they stood out like chocolate sprinkles on coffee ice cream. And on here I wrote, better, I guess? Page 121. Bernardin was thin, very thin, with purple-black skin that gleamed like a well-polished eggplant. And I do want to mention this character is very subservient and is like the only person with a written accent. It's icky. Let me give you some examples on the sentence structure that is rampant throughout this. Okay, here's some dialogue for you. Someone cut off the left hand? Yes. My focus on the screen, I didn't elaborate. My golly, those are clean cuts. Your doer used one wackadoodle sharp blade. Any suggestions as to tool type? Machete? Cleaver? Fifth image. What the dingle donkey is that? I kept having to write little cry faces in there. I suffered to read this. When we first met in my office, you said a fisherman found the bones. My tone implied a question. I got that from the question mark on the sentence. And it also just tells you what's going to happen before it happens, so there's no suspense too. One of the ending chapters is like, oh, too bad she's dead. Too bad I'll never see her again because she's dead. And then the next chapter, they're like, oh, wonder why she's not here. Let's go find her. I know she's dead. It's just so annoying. I hated this book. I will never read anything Kathy Reich ever writes again. And this is book like 22 in this series. It also like dates itself really bad. Like there's literally a quote that says, with the queen having passed not that long ago. And it talks about memes. And it also says something about like the year too. So didn't like that. She also is like weird about the woman who died, even though she'd only known her for like a week at that point and not well. Oh, and then it also has this little quirk. I'll just show it to you. Can you read that? It says, son of a freaking zombie bitch and its spawn. It just kept doing that over and over. And it wasn't the same one, but it was like, is this supposed to be funny? Am I supposed to be chuckling? Because I'm not. I hope you understand how much I did not like this. I'm sure that you do. I just thought this was insufferable. This is like one of the worst things I've ever read. Hated that. Worst blind book I've ever gotten, and it's the only blind book that I've ever gotten. I wanted a romance. I don't think this could have been worse. Anyway, the last book I read in May was The Lamb by Lucy Rose. This one was kind of middle of the road for me. I really think it could have been shorter because it got really, really repetitive. But it was good. Like, I did like the themes of it. It had themes of motherhood and the relationship between mothers and daughters and the lack of self that comes with being a mother. But it is from the point of view from the child, and we watch her grow up, I think, a couple of years. Basically, her family are cannibals. So they have a cottage out in the woods and they throw nails in the road so people's tires will pop, and they'll eventually find their way over there and they drug them and eat them. And that is until they eventually decide to keep one of the strays who turns out to be exactly like them. Her mother and this woman fall in love, and it changes the dynamic of the mom and the daughter's relationship. So, trigger warnings for child abuse on page, death, cannibalism, descriptive mutilation, murder of a child, and dismemberment of a child on page. So, the main character, I think her name was Margot, she essentially, throughout the book, is looking at what they're doing to people in a new light as she is distancing herself from her mother, and her mother is unhappy with the role that she got in life, especially as her mother and Eden get closer. They wonder what it's like to not have to take care of someone anymore, a family that eats people. But I did like that. I just thought it was really repetitive, and it definitely could have been like 100 pages shorter, and I think that would have been way more concise and enjoyable, because it kind of got a little bit grueling. Like, there's only so many times I can, hear someone call their mom mama, which was every time she referenced her mom, which was all the time. And then, like, eating fingers and stuff. Like, there's only so many times you can go over that, and it's gonna add something to the story. That's what I read in May. We had a pretty good month. I am recording this at the beginning of June. So far I have finished Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, and then I have also finished Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. This was really good, but I'm going to talk about it in the next video, as well as Martyr. And so after those two, I am hoping to finish up the month with Felix Ever After by Kaysen Callender, Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, and then The Dream Hotel by Leila Leilani. I am so excited about the next couple of books. I hope it's going to be a really good reading month. Anyway, if you've read those books, let me know how you liked them. Let me know if you didn't like them. Hated The Bone Hacker. Please never read that one. The other ones are good though. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day or night whenever you are hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks.